Hey there, ghosts and ghouls. Disney hasn't got to me yet, so I'm gonna put out a new video. This one is Room Zero. It connects with the Abandoned by Disney series, and it's by Anonymous, but we all know he knows what he's talking about. He's a real person, and Disney will never shut me up on these. I hope you all enjoy it, because I may not be around for the next one. It's been a while since I've written anything related to Disney Corporation, and I'm sure you can understand why. A lot has been going on since my last post. I received a lot of questions and concerns from folks who've read my first-hand account of Mowgli's Palace, a resort that was built and abandoned by Disney. I want to thank everyone who mirrored my post. It's been taken down from a few places, mostly corporate sites that were easily leaned on by larger powers. However, for every new topic or disappearing blog post, it seems like hundreds more have popped up. This is something that they'll have to face. There's no turning back from it. None for me either. I'm definitely being followed. For the first month or two, I chalked it up to paranoia. Any casual glance or half smile in my direction set me off, hair standing on the back of my neck and everything. The first one I was actually able to spot was a telephone worker miles milling around my apartment complex. He was a middle-aged, doughy, dressed just like you'd expect, but something just seemed off about him. I couldn't place it, but I knew this wasn't just my imagination acting up. He was awkward and out of place, not somebody who was comfortable doing his routine job. I followed him around the corner only to lose him there. When I turned back to go home, there he was, staring directly at me, about 10 feet behind me, expressionless and cold. "Exploring?" he asked. That's what all he said, and there was an accusing tone in his voice. Tell me what blue-collared phone jockey does that? I guess that's the worst part. Never feeling safe, never feeling alone. That's the occasional Disney merchandise left somewhere for me to find. Little rubber Mickeys in my mailbox, a Disney Adventure magazine on my bookshelf. They hide little Mickeys everywhere. 3 circles, 1 big, 2 small, in the silhouette of the famous mouse's head. I've started keeping a running list of Mickeys I found. Coffee cup rings on my coffee table, 1 big, 2 small. Colored glass bottles left on my doorstep, viewed from the top down, all red. Graffiti on the wall of my way to work, a huge earth, small sun, and small moon in proper locations. They're everywhere. People have emailed me about this as well. If you replied anything, I have to say, you're going to start finding these sons of a bitch outlines. I guarantee it. The best one by far, one that actually made me laugh because of the horror of it all, was a drawing in chalk next to my car. I was taken aback at first, walking through the parking garage, keeping an eye out for people following me. The outline seemed to be a perfect match for, well, a murder victim. You're probably familiar with it. You've read my post, written in yellow paint, I'm sure was a single word: retract. The only good thing that has come out of all of this is that I know I'm not the only one who seems in something that they shouldn't have. I'm not going to give their names because, well, if I have to tell you why, you haven't been paying attention. Researcher goes to Disney parks whenever he can, all throughout the year. He's not going to have fun, enjoy the rides, etc. He's looking for gascots. That's been a long tradition, apparently, of people reporting strange patrons throughout the park. Silent, motionless, staring patrons of every age, shape, and size. Men and women, adults, children, and teens, all wearing Disney-themed gas masks. Way back when Disney would get tons of complaints about oddly dressed folk following others around the park, folks who would then merge into the crowd and disappear. Later on, the gas masks caused folks to draw other conclusions, and reports of possible terrorists or bombers started to flow. All of these reports mostly likely went straight into the trash can. I know, I can't follow any sign of any such occasion reported by the media. Although you should be aware of the fact that Disney can pretty much control its press like no other. Researcher goes to the park, talks to a few people, and tries not to draw any attention to himself. He'll just ask 3 or 4 families if they've seen his friends, who's wearing a funny mask. He has yet to see a gascot himself, though on one occasion a child pointed him towards the frontier town. As he raced through the crowd, he heard a single voice ahead cry out, "Mommy, I want a goofy bear mask too!" A fellow I'll call lifeguard worked in Disney's water park from 2001 to 2003. He stood at the top of the huge water slide and made sure none of the kids got too rowdy. He passed the kids through one at a time, telling them over and over again to be safe, keep their arms in, and so on. One day, he tells it, this fat kid goes down the tube and doesn't come out the other end. He sent 2 or 3 kids after. The whole thing moves at a steady clip, so naturally you'd expect that if the fatty got stuck, the kids that followed him were stuck too. Not so. Only the big kid disappeared. Everyone else comes out the other end, cheering and splashing like nothing's wrong. Lifeguard shuts down the slide, much to the aggravations of the kids waiting. Before he can go through any Disney strict procedures, splash! Fatty finally comes out! Staff members pulled the kid out of the water. He sank like a stone when he hit. His skin already blue and his eyes wide. All he would say is, "No face, kids!" and "Stop squeezing!" The kid was okay, in case you're wondering. He got carted right off into the medical center. When Lifeguard was told to open the slide back up, he made a big stink about how it clearly wasn't safe. Despite his complaints, he was threatened with firing and begrudgingly opened the slide again. From that point on, he kept a closer eye on the kids. Every so often, they'd come out in the wrong order. Never as stunned as the fat kid, but always with a vague look of concern, a dreamy half-stupor that seemed as if they were trying to figure out what was reality. They'd taken on some water and choke a bit, and they'd never come back to the ride again. I read his emails with the same sort of unease you might be feeling right now. I wanted him to share his own story, but in the end, he doesn't want to expose himself that way. I can't say I blame him. Snow White, which wasn't the actual role she played as a character in the park, she had a nice little tidbit for me. You know what happens when a customer employee drops dead in a suit? Like 1 second, he's taking a picture with little Jimmy, and the next, he's had a fatal heat stroke? A second costume mascot in the area has to sit with the corpse on a curb or bench and wait for the designated dry cleaner to arrive and cart the body away in a discreet manner. All the while, patrons have no idea they're sitting with a dead body for a photo op. Feel free to check your photo album at this point. That was bad, but another feller, Janitor, went completely off the creepy charts. Disney World, and probably others, is built with a series of underground tunnels just below your feet. They're stories worth. Anything and everything you can imagine is down there for use of the employees. They're called utility corridors. Basically, there's a reason you don't see characters out of place or janitors wandering through the park. They pop in and out of the hidden corridors and travel a concealed town you're walking on. Janitors told me something that might be common knowledge, but was nonetheless news to me. Walt Disney's had several apartment buildings in his park. There's one above Cinderella's castle. There's one in the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. They're all over the place. More than that, there are nightclubs, a movie theater, a bowling alley, and much, much more. All doors behind built right into the whimsical facade you pass by without a second thought. Club 22 is one such hidden area. If you have to cash to join the exclusive club, you don't, then they'll have access to it and much more. Club 22 is a place where anything goes. Disney Co. calls this place Dark Zone. Spots where the squeaky clean visage of Mickey Mouse give way to the drinking, drugs, and yes, sex. Conversely, the rest of the park is the bright zone, with a few gray zones, utilidors between. As far as Janitor has said, It wasn't always that way. It was more of a slow decline and the gradual relaxing of social norms within the elite groups. The reason he knows all of this, you may have already guessed. He's cleaned it. After a length of background check and non-disclosure forms, Janitor moved up from a park attendant to one of the Dark Zone cleaning crew. Now, before you get some satanic human sacrifice vision in your head, Janitor saw nothing of the sort. Lots of empty alcohol bottles, yes, used condoms scattered like deflated New Year's balloons. Oh yeah, he's cleaned up his share of blood, piss, and vomit. But it was all down to the undiscreet behavior of patrons as opposed to any sort of cult behavior. At least that's how he sees it in retrospect. All that trash, that profane shit, went into the furnace and mingled with the smoke of the quaint cottage chimneys. If you've been at Disney World, you breathe utter condensed sin. Backing up his information was Hammer. Hammer mailed me an old-fashioned way through, though I don't know how he got my home address. He sent me photocopies of work papers proving his employment with the instructions to burn them when I was convinced, which I did gladly. Hammer worked around Disney World Park, doing demolition and construction. At one point, he approached a superior regarding some strange construction plan. There was a wide rectangle marked off the blueprint about the size of a supermarket. The area was left unnamed and only bore the words, "Do not dig." Not only was his superiors in the dark, but he was super fucking purposefully in the dark. He doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't want to know about it, and ended the conversation with, "This space intentionally left blank." Hammer doesn't get it. The area seemed a waste of space, and it was directly conflicting with the work his team had been given. He started poking around the area on his off time, finding only a decorative steel door and a great span of concrete just beyond. It was supermarket worth a blank gray floor. Soon after, Hammer started picking up gascots out of the crowd. Unlike all the other reports, the people, the things would stand in full view of the guy. They clustered together in the distance, and they'd just press against the wall when he turned the corner. He said they moved weird, like they were weak or injured, like a deer that had been run down by a hunter and can't flee anymore. The gas masks the Disney characters' faces with filter jammed in. He noted that they seemed wet on the inside, like condensation on a car window. Tiny beads of water glinted behind the glass, making it impossible for any of them to actually see. Probing further, Hammer started asking questions of anyone or everyone who had been working in the park for the decade. He hit dead ends throughout until he was directed to Idea. An older lady who worked in the restaurant of the main street. She'd been there since way back, and though nobody had the balls to ask directly, everyone knew she had plenty of terrible stories to tell. Hammer asked about the empty space, then about the gas masked customers, and at first he thought he would receive the same non-answer he'd gotten so far. But she was quiet, eerily quiet. "Room 0, she croaked, a single shaky hand placed to her cheek as if she was a little girl fearing father's punishment. She didn't mean the man's gaze for the entire conversation. Room 0, as it turned out, was yet another hidden room, just like the apartments in Club 22. However, its sheer size and its spot deep beneath the park set it apart from any of the fun dark zones. It was a bomb shelter. Room 0 was built to withstand a massive attack, be it conducting by foreign or domestic enemies. Room 0 was to be stocked with enough rations to feed the entire park's average number of patrons at any given moment, and housed a smaller, lavish panic room of sort for Disney higher-ups. During World War II, official Disney gas masks were actually produced for children to wear in the event of an attack. The idea was that it would be less scary for a kid if Mickey Mouse was embezzled on the wartime safety device. Yes, I know the obvious problem with the fact. During the Cold War scare of the 60s, when Disney World was constructed, Room 0 was stocked with similar gas masks as well. Whether they cared about the fears of children or just callous branding, the things found their way down there. What's more, some genius decided that the kids would then be frightened by the gas masks their parents wore, and so all masks, adult and child, were made to complete to the insane standards. Ida described it as treating a wound with lemon juice. None of this explained what Hammer had been seeing, though. Not only the seemingly supernatural appearance, but the emptiness of out of room as well. "I've been in there," she explained. "There's nothing but a cement floor and 4 walls. "No." Ida shook her head and covered her mouth, sniffling a sob. "You've been on top of it." Someone or something sounded the alarm one day when the park was at full capacity. The warning was clear. It was supposedly an air attack. Security ushered everyone down in the tremendous shelter. There, they were ordered to put on their masks and hunker down for the duration of the assault. Everything was quiet for about 30 minutes, save for a crying child and a frightened whisper. No one wanted to die, and so they were thankful in any way for the strange measure of safety. Then, the first scream rang out. "Hey, man!" a man shouted. "Quit pinching!" Waving and shrieks and yells rippled through the crowds. From one wall to the other, back and forth. "Who's running around?" "Settle down!" somebody hollered. "Who's laughing? This isn't funny! Ow! Who stepped on my foot?" Despite security guards urging to calm down and keep their cool, the crowd became more and more agitated until finally, after nearly an hour of madness, the lights flickered, then died. What followed could only be described as utter chaos. In the dark, only the wails of the young and the anguished cries of adults could be heard in a massive, swelling din that bloodied the ears of all within the black echo chamber. A group of staff members and a select few patrons made it out the door ready to face the war above rather than the insanity below. What they found, of course, was a desolate yet untouched theme park. The music continued to play, echoing through silent storybook towns. Upon returning to room 0, the few who stood at the top of the steel staircase that led down to the pitch blackness heard no sign of the previous fray. There was only silence. Ida herself descended that staircase despite the beginning of those she left above. She reached the reinforced door herself, now awash in darkness, hearing only the buzzing in her ears. A single voice came out of the darkness. The echo made it impossible to tell whether the mocking or raspy voice was at the back of the bomb shelter or if it was right in front of her face. "Shut the door, dear. You're letting out the cold." Gripped by terror, she did just that. Within days, the entire thing and shelter staircase, all of it, was covered with feet upon feet of cement. Air systems and generators above its ceiling were removed, creating the large, empty space. "They're all still down there," Ida told Hammer. "Down there, with whatever that was." You might notice I've used Ida's real name. Unfortunately, she passed away soon after telling her story. Accidentally fell, supposedly after getting out of bed to turn on the light. Such a company devotee, the paper reported, that her entire bedroom was covered with Mickey Mouse silhouettes. So, my ghosts and ghoulies, what did you think of that? Do you think Disney really has plans? Do you think they really have created these monstrosities, this horrifying things? Do you think this story is real, or do you think I'm paranoid? Tell me below, or do you have any more information on Disney, what they've been planning? And subscribe to me up top, so that way, if I disappear, you'll know it. You'll know the truth, though, at least. And like this video so they can see how many people know this truth. But until then, this is Warlock Boo. Hope to be spooking y'all later. Bye.
I found you!
No! No!